What's going on, y'all? Y'all know what it is. It's Inside Abode. It's been a minute. I think it's been a couple weeks. Nah, it actually has been a couple weeks. So thank y'all for tuning in. This is Dave Jones. I'm with you, every week. Just doing the thing. We're on Inside Abode live this time. So these are more live, unscripted podcasts. I'm enjoying this format a little bit more personally. And, we're going to just make it do what it do. So let me go ahead and just fix this real quick. I wanted to go into some data about the markets real quick because I think people probably have some questions around that. Let me see if I can pull something up real quick, just for a quick. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do a whole other small podcast on that. I'm not even gonna go there. I'm not even gonna do that. We're gonna get into our guest today, but before I get into our guest, I say this every week: hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe on YouTube because we're gonna be living here too as well. Hit the subscribe on IG. Follow us. Hit the subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Hit the subscribe on Spotify. Hit the subscribe on whatever. And then, tap in. If you're watching live, you can tap in, ask us a question, do whatever. You know what I mean? So just if you have a question, that's what we're here for. And we're here to serve our community in multiple ways. I do want to remember that, and I said this on the last podcast, is that it's Fair Housing Month. April is Fair Housing Month. We're about more than a little halfway through now, being the 17th or 18th. I don't even know what day it is. But I know we're in the middle of the month, and, Fair Housing, we just had a Fair Housing conference as Tapcar put on. So shout out to Sean Martin and shout out to everyone else that showed up. Abodies were thick up in there. Jasmine and Desiree, who's been on this podcast, both of them been on the podcast, and they did their own podcast on the stage over there. That was super dope. And, and we had some national speakers there. Bill Dedman that did the Newsday investigation in New Jersey, that Long Island Divided, that was super dope. I didn't get a chance to see him. And then we had, oh man, her name's missing me, but Maddy knows the name. I just told you my guest today. So our guest today is an Abode as well. She's been on the podcast before. We're going to talk about some things today that are pretty interesting. I think some of you buyers are going to want to definitely listen to this conversation, because if you're out there looking for homes right now, I think you're going to want to listen to this. And that tells me it's time to bring on our guest. So Maddy Mixter, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Stoked to be here.
Yeah. So I'm going to put in what's your @ down there? You see it down there in the bottom under your name?
Can I do it? I sure can. Wow. Technology is great.
Yeah. Type that in there. And we'll get started. But first, so I was talking about it. Do you know that? So what's the name of, oh man, it's killing me. And I'm trying not to go look it up. She was at the NAR representative.
What is her name? She and Ann talked? Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't really catch that session, so I'm not totally sure. Okay. But she, from DC, and I think did a really interesting, what I heard was that there's a lot of talk about the national perspective and NAR, like the National Association of Realtors, what their stance is, and especially during Fair Housing Month, where there's a lot of change nationally with government and this, administration, what is getting funded, what isn't getting funded, and what's getting supported even, or, dissolved. So there was a lot of that conversation on stage there.
Yeah, no, that's Alexa Smokler. Smokler, and she's from Virginia, but she is with NAR. Her role is the director of Fair Housing. So that's
there you go.
But yeah, it's super. What I think is dope is, and Marguerite said this in one of her IG posts, is that this was the only Fair Housing conference in the state of Washington for the whole month of April, which is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of our people. I'm really proud of Tacoma. I'm really proud of our association for, putting this on. That's super dope.
Absolutely. So. And I think it's a really interesting thing, talking about buyers and talking about first-time home buyers in a climate that is interesting, that is, not always super supportive of that fair housing law that has been around since, 1968, right? Yeah. And it's been, a lot of the conversation was how those laws are just not being held up in everyday
Mhm.
practices in real estate. And that's maybe a whole nother podcast topic we could talk about, but
that that's a
it's a lot.
podcast we're
Yeah.
gonna have in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely, about around clear cooperation and all that. I don't want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about right now. There's just a lot
Mm-hmm.
of moving parts right now, but I
Absolutely.
definitely, it's not because I don't want to talk about it. Trust me.
We could
I
dive
just
in.
think I want the air to clear. I think that there's just a lot to figure out still,
Yeah.
and obviously Windermere's shown where they stand, and so I'm grateful for that. And but there's a lot of education that needs to take place too around that and a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
things, which brings up topics around other conversations. So I think it's really good actually for us to go through all of this mucky stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so that we can get to the brass tacks of what's everyone's coming from a different perspective, and I think that's
Yeah.
really good. That's healthy for the conversation. So
Agreed.
I'm looking forward to, but of course I have my own perspective too.
We all do,
So
don't we?
yeah, mine's not too hard to figure out, but
Yeah, mine either, but
for real. What else is going on? How's spring market going for you? I was gonna do some data
yeah,
and stuff, but let's just talk about some ground level stuff. What are you going through like with
totally.
your buyers, and what are you seeing out there?
It's interesting because everyone's like, wow, the market, like what recession is coming, all of these different kind of
Hmm.
things. Because, like you said, there's a lot of noise out there and there's a lot of reporting in different worlds. What I'm seeing on the ground with buyers right now is that there's not enough inventory and there's not enough inventory at the price points or quality that people are looking for. And that,
Mm.
dives into what we're going to talk about today. But also, that for on the selling side, there's not a lot of inventory that's being presented well, being priced efficiently,
Mm.
and like, prices are in Tacoma. I'll speak on Tacoma area, but
Yeah.
prices are creeping up, but kind of staying kind of plateaued. They were not seeing a dip in value, but last year was a softer market and appraisals are kind of a little all over the place. There's not a lot of
Yeah.
comps to support highly increasing values that kind of the market, like because of the lack of inventory, is supporting. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting point where like the appraisal piece really does play a part in indicating that the market's shifting. So I think it's a little bit uncertain still right now, but I do think spring is springing here. And I do think there are, I've been getting more calls about, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house before the summer, or, those
Mm.
kinds of conversations that, people are ready to move and shake things up a little bit after a slower year last year.
Good to hear. Just
Mm-hmm.
because and I'm trying to get to into the Northwest MLS, and I'm
I'll
not.
pull that.
Yeah, I'm
And
not.
just one other thing that I'll say is that
Yeah,
people
go
are still buying houses. And I think it's an interesting conversation since people think recession and people think like, oh, there's no buyers, right? Like this recession like has not impacted as many buyers as I've seen. Like job insecurity, those other things are still out there. And of course,
ahead.
that's going to decrease the amount of buyers, but we still have a huge demand, especially in the Northwest, where
Yeah.
we're still seeing that demand come through for buyers. And, there's just not enough inventory for the amount of buyers. So it's still slightly a seller's market, is what I've been seeing.
Okay. Okay. That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring the charts up and stuff later on another podcast. Y'all gonna have to wait for that. So, but yeah, I agree. Like it seems like when people ask me, I'm like, it depends. I know,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's so many nuanced conversations going on though for buyers and sellers, and like there's a lot of decisions making. So like we can
Yeah.
look at all the numbers, but that doesn't always tell the whole story in terms of what's going on the
Mm-hmm.
ground level, like with some of the decisions
Right
make
on.
that are
Yeah.
being made. And today we're going to talk a little bit about like that decision if you should like what house you should buy, because I feel like managing expectations is part of your guys' jobs and my job and realtors' jobs in general, which is like how do you manage someone's expectations when they're dreaming about the thing that they want, but you're just like it might not all the way be everything that you're going to get,
For
like
sure.
especially in this
And
marketplace.
and I think a lot of exposure on the internet, think about HGTV or influencers' houses that you're seeing, people buy. It's this like Instagrammable house. And oftentimes when you are shopping for a house, especially as a first time home buyer, or maybe trying, to make a budget work and push that budget,
Hmm.
like you might not be walking into a house that's like ready for the gram, to be honest. You
Right.
know what I mean? And so I think it's seeing past some of the stuff that might not, seeing past sometimes the smell or the carpet to be like, hey, there's actually a lot of opportunity here and it is meeting the majority of my wants and needs. Like maybe it's worth seeing past that. And
Yeah, like
yeah,
having that vision, you know what I mean? Like having a little
totally.
bit of vision in the process, and
Hmm.
I think that's important. Like I remember when Ann and I we bought our first house, and it was definitely it was Delta Hooley's childhood home first and foremost.
Okay.
But like we remodeled. It was on South 11th. We
Hmm.
remodeled the whole thing, like
Yeah.
the whole exact thing. I remember taking the brick chimney out, like punching it with the things, and we're taking the brick out. We took the whole chimney out. Like we did
Yeah.
everything in that house. I learned a lot about home ownership in that whole journey, but like we had to take the siding off. It was like metal
Yeah.
siding and it was all
Yeah.
rusted over and stuff. Like that was an experience. I mean, the yard obviously,
Sure.
fencing, basement
And
stuff, like
and old houses have weird stuff going on. Like
yeah.
I'm kind of wrapping towards the tail end of a large home renovation of my
Yeah.
house, which was my first house that I bought. And
Hmm.
it's like we opened up a wall that we thought was just going to be a normal wall and it was made of doors. Like that is the like story that I tell people all the time that sometimes older homes you open up one thing expecting one thing and it's like, oh, it's 100 years of kind of funky remodels and you
Yep.
just have to be a little flexible with that. But or roll up your sleeves and get into it. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of opportunity there to be like, hey, I'm here for that sweat equity and I can put in the work and time to
Yep.
make the house what you want it to be.
Yeah, like so I know one of the advantages that I had, or the one of the advantages that we had was, my father-in-law is a contractor, and
Hmm.
I know Joe, you have Joe, and he
Hmm.
works on with
Yeah,
electrical and does all the things. But like what about people that don't have those resources, to like that be like, oh well, yeah, move into this fixer, or buy this house,
hmm,
but you don't have no resources. What do you tell them, or
right.
how do you guide them through that process?
Well, I mean, I think that speaks to a big value of working with a real estate agent that has the
Mm,
access to different vendors and the knowledge and maybe firsthand experience of renovating because they have the context that other agents might not. And they have
mm,
the connections that other agents might not. And I think that really does add some value. Like recently I was working with some buyers and we were talking about, we had done the inspection. We were talking about like the prioritization of some of this stuff. And they're like, well, how could we wait for a roof? Like, could we wait for this electrical panel and these sorts of things?
right.
And even though sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm definitely not a contractor. But I have some connections and some phone calls that I could make to say, hey, should we like do this first? Or if, what about this electrical panel? Is it a safety hazard or is it something that can wait a few years? And figuring out kind of what you should prioritize and what your budget looks like for that. And if
Mm,
that pays off. And I think having a realtor that has that connection is a huge value add for a first time home buyer or someone who hasn't gone through that process but wants to.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so and we were laughing, we were joking, and I wasn't joking really. I was just like, is that like, do you have a name for that? Is it called like the 80% rule or something like
Yeah,
that? Like where you
I I don't have a name for it, but we can call it the 80% rule, where when
that's
I'm
it.
shopping with clients, I'm like, hey, do we like this house? Like, if you're rating it on a scale of 1 to 10, is it rating above a 7? If it's in that 80% hitting all the marks range, that's the
Uh-huh.
point where we're going to talk about writing an offer. That's the point that it's like, okay, it has room for improvement, sure, but that's some of just living in a house. That's some of
Yeah.
putting your art on the wall or getting your plants put in or, you seeing your stuff in the house and maybe some renovation. And especially as like, I keep talking about first time home buyers, but first time home buyers, that's a real great opportunity because sometimes sellers are not willing to do the work to get a house to a certain price point to
Mm,
sell.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
sometimes they say, I'm not willing to do these things. I'm not going to change out the carpet, or I'm not
yep,
going to do this kitchen remodel. So I'm going to list for lower. And that is a price, that's a value opportunity for a buyer to say, I am willing to do that, or I have the skill or, the moxie to do it. I'm going to just
yeah,
go and the grit to do it. And be able to gain that equity, not by paying more, but rather than just like kind of rolling up your sleeves and getting it done.
mm-hmm.
And
That sweat equity.
that sweat
Oh,
equity, that sweet sweat
I
equity.
mean, what if I don't like? What if I don't? Because I'm gonna be real. Like, I hate doing yard work. Like, I had to grow into doing yard work. And actually, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I say that now, but like when I get out there though, I'm good. Like, I
Hmm.
turn into a yard work demon. Like, I'm trying to do all the things, but then once I take my shoes off and go back inside, it's like, yeah, I ain't trying to do no yard work.
Yeah. Yard
It's
work
like
doesn't happen
Jekyll and
after
Hyde.
lunch break, right?
I'm Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to that, man. Like, I get outside and put my stuff on, and I'm like, get ready to go. Then I'm like, I'm all in. Like, yep, let's do it. Like,
Hmm.
you're out there. You can't like be miserable, or else, like, why be miserable when
Right.
you're doing something good for your house? Like, I don't know, but I feel like there's room to. I don't know. I also don't know. I would be interested in like the how different generations view home buying and home ownership, and
Hmm.
like what they expect in their homes. Like,
Absolutely.
are newer, like older millennial slash younger millennial home buyers in any of the prior generations, but I want to focus mainly there because
Hmm.
that's home buying formation age right now. But what their expectations are. I wonder if there's more people buying homes that need work on them or not, or what. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's one of those gray area things that I'm just curious
totally.
about.
And I think, like, to go back to your point of like, what if I don't like doing home
Mm,
renovation stuff?
mm-hmm.
Where it's like, maybe, yeah, DIY, or like I could do it myself, but that's not how I don't have time. I don't want to spend my time doing that. I think there's a lot of very, very skilled tradesmen and women and around the like county. And I
Yeah.
think connecting with them and getting reasonable prices and strategy through that is very doable. And I think that also, you know, thinking about people who are maybe not wanting to do it themselves, there are a lot of loan products that actually,
Mm,
as long as you are working with licensed contractors that are, insured and all of that fun stuff, there's
yeah.
different home renovation loans you can get, or in the process of buying the home, you can do a rehab loan. So that's a loan product. Again, I'm not a lender, but I've worked with some people on these loans where it's like the actual loan product is buying the house at the purchase price plus
Mm-hmm.
a certain number of additional funds that go towards the renovation. So then the total
Mm,
appraisal at the end of the day will be the total amount for the loan.
mm,
So these loans generally take a little longer. They're not as competitive as like a classic, conventional financing loan.
yeah.
And they do require more work on the lending side of it because that also pulls in a contractor to
Mm-hmm.
give a bid, formally say how much everything's going to cost. And it is something that some contractors stray away from because they have some more accountability. But
Yeah.
most contractors, it's like, a solid job that is getting bank funded, it's, pretty guaranteed for them. And if you find a contractor that is willing to work on that, I think it's a really great option for buying those houses that need a little extra love, but you don't have maybe the out of pocket funds ready, but you would qualify for the larger, end total amount of the
Yeah.
loan.
Did y'all use anything like that, or is it mostly just like
No,
cash
I
credit?
went conventional back. I bought my house in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have been lucky enough to gain equity over sweat equity and just a number of years of owning the home. So when we finance it, or when we finance this renovation, it's just a home equity loan, which is
Okay.
something to think about. Like, I've had this conversation with a few friends recently where they're like, I can't decide if I want to move, like sell my house and buy a new one, or if I just need to update my house that I'm in right
Mm,
now.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really interesting dilemma. And I'll walk
Yeah.
you through like the conversations Joe and
Yeah.
I had
Please
about
do.
this
Yeah.
because I think
Please.
it's an interesting
I'm trying to
thing.
hear this.
because so for us, our house, the big sticking point was size. It was about
Mm.
750 square feet, one bedroom, one bath, and we were just like, oh, we just really need another bedroom. And it was just like, we just need a little more space. But our lot is huge. It's almost 9,000 square feet.
Okay.
It's long and narrow lot in South Tacoma. And so we really just at the end of the day, we're like, we like our neighborhood, we like our neighbors, we like the lot, we like, basically most things about the house except for the size. And
Okay.
so we started doing research about additions and ended up talking with a designer, an architect, structural engineer, all of the things to be like, is this a viable option? And
Mm-hmm.
does it make sense? And for budget wise, taking out a home equity loan plus our existing mortgage
Mm-hmm.
together was still a monthly payment that was less than buying a new home.
Mm.
And so for us, it made sense. And because of my career and connections and those sorts of things, I was like, I felt confident in being able to manage the project to a certain degree
Yeah.
and also finance it. And so that's the route we went. And, but for some people, like this project has been going on for quite some time, like nearly 2 years. And so it's like, for some
Wait,
people,
whoa,
they
whoa.
can't, I know. And so for some people, it's like that isn't a timeline they can follow, right? Like that is not a timeline that they can suitably deal with that. We could
Yeah.
deal with it and, we're doing it, but it's like, there's some people that can't deal with that, and that's totally understandable. And that's the situation where you're like, okay, we're getting this house ready to sell, and we're going to go find another house that makes more sense for us.
Yeah, and I think when people hear that too, like when they hear your story, everyone's story is different. So, like for
Mm-hmm.
example, you might be buying a house that just needs new flooring in the kitchen or something, or
Totally.
like taking some of that on. I think is reasonable. Like, as if can you live in it? Like, I'm probably the worst person to walk through any house because I was just telling the story on the podcast that I was just recording before. I was like, man, I was living in a duplex, like down Gig Harbor. We were living in a duplex with 5 people, and me and my brother were sleeping out in the garage with the rats. Like that was a time in my life, you know what I mean? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to high school and doing my thing and whatever, and then I come home and we just that was the but it was dope though. You couldn't tell me that it wasn't dope back then because I was like, man, this is kind of the move out here. But looking back, I'm like, damn, we were really out there putting rat mouse traps out there, but like it and so to me like anything seems cute and kind of like I can live in kind of anything, I guess.
Turnkey is totally subjective, right?
Yeah,
Like,
hundred
what
percent.
is turnkey being like, you could move in tomorrow? Like, to me, I could live in a lot of different things, but
Yeah,
like, someone else might be like, I need brand new this, that, or I need a certain square footage or design and that sort of thing, too, right?
yeah,
Like, it really is subjective. And so, being able to kind of sometimes push the limits on that and say, yeah, I could live with this pretty gnarly kitchen for a couple of years, knowing that down the line it'll pay off. I can do this, whatever, because of the other 80%, right? The other
yeah,
80% in this house that's making it worthwhile means that I can put up with this maybe not
yeah,
great piece that is down the road. Once that kind of falls into place, it'll mean equity, it'll mean better functionality for you living in the house yourself, like all of those things.
yeah. And every like even the house that we're in right now, like we moved out of that Central Tacoma house. We're in Fircrest now, and we've been working. I mean, there's still stuff to be done on that house. Like it's been I don't know over a decade for sure. 14 years or something, and it's just like there's there's always something,
Yeah.
and
I there's always something,
I
and
don't know.
my dad, when I first bought a house, he told me this, and it's a catchphrase for his whole life, but it's like, buy a house, never be bored, right? Like you
Yeah,
always have something you can work on. And I think the idea of like, you buy a house and nothing ever goes wrong or nothing is ever needing updated, like that's just not realistic
yeah.
either. It's like,
Okay.
buying a house and kind of knowing that there's gonna be something down the line, especially if you live in it for more than a year, there
Yeah.
might be something that comes up.
How about this? So, what is the like? So, let's say you go into you're getting ready to your clients are buying a house. You have buyers that are buying a house. There's more than one thing obviously that needs to be done in this house. It's not necessarily a fixer, but it's somewhere in
Mm-hmm.
between. Like you can live in it right now. It's turnkey to my
Mm-hmm.
standards. It's turnkey. What would be the even let's just say there's multiple things that need to be done, like the kitchen, all the things. But the
Hmm.
foundation's fine, the bones of the house are fine, but it needs to be updated. All the things need to be
Yeah.
updated. What are the first things that you would tell people to update?
Mm.
Like, let's say that you have a blank slate. You
Yeah.
everything needs updated. It's a
Yeah.
1970s house and nothing has changed. What would be the first thing like that you would tell people
Mm.
to update in that house?
Yeah. 1970s. So that is post, we'll say it's post lead-based paint. It's post
Yeah, it's
knob and
after
tube.
1978.
Yep, yep. So it's post even knob and tube wiring.
Yeah.
So we're maybe looking at like some funky aluminum wiring. And I'll take some pages out of my electrical husband's book.
Yeah.
I would check and make sure the systems are updated. Like that's a big thing in a
Okay.
house. It's like you can have a really pretty house, but if your systems aren't working or updated, like it's not going to be worth much and it's going to be a pain to live in. So looking at electrical, looking at plumbing, looking at sewer lines, looking at your roof, and wanting to make sure that foundation is in good shape. Doing kind of those like the bones of it, really looking at that, and then building from there because it's like
Okay.
those have to work because if they're not working, nothing else is working,
Okay.
and it's not worth updating other things if it's not protected in one way or another either. So
Okay.
looking at those systems and then going to like one tier in, right? Like kind of going down the funnel. The big things that need to be done are systems. Maybe then you're looking at flooring, you're looking at paint, you're looking at flow of the house. Like, do things need to be moved around? A lot of people talk about knocking out a wall. If we're talking 70s, things might be closed off. That kitchen might be walled in. So it's like, do we want to open this up and make it the flow a little bit more modern? I am a certified open concept hater personally.
Oh, really?
So
Don't
yeah,
like the open concept?
the true open concept is not for me. Now,
Okay.
some people love it. It's not for me. I think having a little bit of understanding of where things go and like a little bit of
Okay.
separation from the
Okay.
kitchen and the
That's a hot.
bathrooms and that sort of thing. That's my hot take for the
That's a
podcast.
hot. To me, that's a hot take.
Uh
Like,
huh.
I was just talking to some folks that just bought last weekend. We were at the Furcus Rec and we were just hanging out, and they had just bought in North Tacoma, and we were talking about. They were asking me why we moved to that community, and I was like, "Oh, I just like the mid-century homes. I like
Mm-hmm.
how, open they
Open.
are. Blah
Yep.
blah blah."
But
And
mid-century is an open concept. I think I'm
that's true.
talking
You're
like
right.
90s 2000 era, like
Okay.
one big room
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of thing.
okay. I see what
That's
you're
what
saying.
I
Yeah, yeah,
don't
no,
love.
I'm with you there. Like
Hmm.
you basically in the living room and you looking right at the dinner table,
Yeah.
like that kind of joint, and
Yeah.
then you got
Or
the
it's
kitchen right
like,
there and there's no walls,
well, and I
nothing
keep thinking,
anywhere.
I'm like, if you can
Is that
smell
what you're
what I'm
talking?
cooking from way over, that's like, you can smell exactly what I'm cooking way over on the other side of the house, but because we're all in the same room,
Got
that's
it.
what I don't like.
I see
Yeah.
what you're saying. Like the one with the big common area, and then there's like a hallway, just and there's like two or three
Hmm.
bedrooms, and that's it. Like that's
Yeah.
like the house. Like it's like
Yep.
okay, there's this big
Hmm.
open space, and then you have a hallway that has three bedrooms or whatever.
Yeah.
I get what you're
That's
saying. Yeah.
not my love. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I was gonna say because we were
Hmm.
talking anyway. They just bought a house and then we were talking about craftsmen's and he was just like talking about like, oh yeah, I know you're right around that wall, but like I have to peek around that wall to just see
Hmm.
you, when really that wall doesn't even need to be there type stuff. And
Right.
I'm like, yeah,
Right.
this is craftsmen's for you. You
Truly.
know, like I love craftsmen's though. I think
I
that
do
you know
too. But
they make
I
it great.
think like there's a way to make things flow and make it make sense without making it one giant room. But I think
Yeah.
some craftsmen's, it's like someone in the 70s put up a wall because that was in style. And now it's
Right.
like, do you really need that? Do I need,
Hmm.
three doors in this hallway when it could just be like a pass through? Like
Right.
that's the kind of stuff that I would say next up after the systems is like really look at how the
Okay.
house flows as a whole. And then go into and it, budget wise, sometimes it makes sense to do things together, right? If you're hiring
Hmm.
somebody to come out and do your tile for your backsplash, maybe it's time to get your tub retiled, or like maybe it's time to
Good
like
idea.
couple those projects together. If you're buying, a countertop slab for your kitchen, do you have extra for your bathroom? Like, does it make
Hmm.
sense to kind of couple some of those things together to make, the most bang for your buck in those renovation projects is kind of what I would say.
Okay.
Also, it's worth maybe even consulting with a designer early on. Like that's something that we did with our house project that I am so thankful for,
Yeah.
because our initial thought was like, oh yeah, we'll add two bedrooms and a bathroom, and we'll leave this here and that. And then we consulted with the designer, and she was like, hey, what about restructuring this, like to be a little bit more flow and make it not
Yeah.
feel like an add-on, like a backpack to the house. I was like,
Okay.
that makes so much sense. And so, there's resources that way where it's just like, hey, let me consult with somebody, bring somebody in. It's not always the most expensive thing, but just having somebody walk through or look at a layout of a house and give you some suggestions can be really beneficial too.
Yeah, and I think, does it matter? Like, should someone be looking at the renovations as they're moving into this house? That so they move into this house, they have some fixes to do. Should they be thinking about more on the side of like value add to the property, like bathrooms, you know, kitchen? Like, should they be looking at those kinds of things, or
Mm-hmm.
or is it going to just be like more cosmetic stuff that they just want, like wants versus like value add? And would you like, where would you guide people on that? Does it just
Yeah, I
depend?
think it depends. And I think it's like obviously value adds from like a numbers return on your investment kind of perspective
Right.
are important. It's like using quality materials and doing it right, like getting it done efficiently and like done well is good. Also, though, I often say, like, don't rent from your future buyer of your house.
Mm,
Don't do something just because it's going to give you money back in the future. I hear, or I've like talked with some folks being like, oh, I really don't like white tile backsplash, for example. We'll just say that. I don't
mm-hmm.
really like this white tile backsplash, but I know it'll be good once we sell the house. And I'm like, when are you selling the house? And they're like, nah, probably like 5 to 10 years. And it's like,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
get the backsplash you want. And
yeah.
it's, trends come and go, but if something brings you joy, don't like assume that a future buyer in 10 years is going to want something from you that you're doing today. Like get
Okay.
something that you like, get something, and there's a balance there. Like if you create a fully custom house that is only designed for how you live your life and it's very out of the norm, yeah, that might need some massaging down the road when we list your house. But
Okay.
like do make decisions for yourself that is brings joy and brings color and like all of those things that like are good for your house. Like that is something that is worthwhile, and sometimes taking a little more of a risk for, but it isn't maybe, well, and I'll say this, like sometimes the renovations are going to make your life better in
Oh,
living in that
yeah.
house,
I agree
right?
with
Like
that.
it
100%.
does. It breaches that. Like if we're going back to the 80/20 conversation of like you like
Mm-hmm.
your house 80%, if you can tick that number up a few dials like to 85, like that changes your quality of life in your house.
100%.
And that's worth it, period.
Yeah, we
Right?
we shoot, in the house that we're in right now, we actually, and to your point about like making it for you. So the way I don't even think about it anymore, but the way that our primary is like, it's almost like a hotel style thing. Like the
Mm-hmm.
sinks
Mm-hmm.
are out in the open.
Yeah.
We just wanted it to feel like it was like you're not
A,
sleeping
a
at home.
suite kind
You're
of.
at a suite.
Yeah.
You're at a hotel, and the sinks are out in the open, and then the shower and the bath are and the toilet are like in their own little like enclosed thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like it works for us.
Totally.
It works for me, and it didn't used to be like that. It was used to have like, it was more traditional where you had a bathroom that was like, it had a little
Mm-hmm.
sliding door, and then yeah, you had your bedroom, and then you had your little closet. But like, yeah, just reconfigured it all to feel more like a oasis, or you're a home away from home
Yeah.
type situation, and I'm just used to it now. But then when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh man, when we go sell this isn't going to work for some people. Like, I don't think it works for us though.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So
think it's like it works for you, do it. Like, and it
yeah,
is, I think some people are like, don't make super custom updates to your home because that's going to ruin your like return on investment. And I just think that if it brings you joy, it is worth the investment. And it's like, yeah, long term, if you're investing a lot of money, you are going to want to see a return on that investment when you resell your house. However, if it brings, if there is a balance there. And I think it is
Yeah.
about improving your quality of life. And like home ownership isn't always about like the money. Having a place that feels like an oasis, feels like yours, works for your life, like that's important.
Yeah, and I think it's super dope because like for me, I don't know. I'm on the side of nah, this is actually good for you. Like it's not meant to have a TV up in there. It's meant for you
Yeah.
to go in there and go to sleep or read or do
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's not meant
Mm-hmm.
to have, all kinds of other stuff. It's not meant to be a multiple living space. It's meant to be your bedroom and a place
Yeah.
to like sleep and do your thing. Like so, it's interesting though, but I think that's
Mm-hmm.
those are decisions that people make in this marketplace, especially when they're making. It feels like Heidi had a good saying the other day. She was just like, "This is a want to market, or not a want to market. This is a have to market, not a want to
Yes.
market."
Yes.
Like you have to move right now, and you don't necessarily want
Mm-hmm.
to move. A lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
there's people out there that are in the want to camp right now,
Sure.
but with the rates where they're at and the sentiment and the macroeconomic situation that we're in right now, most people that are moving right now are like have to move
Mm-hmm.
situations. And so, I just
Yeah.
think that there's decisions like, so I guess it's more like for the want tos or for people even that have to, the decisions are with the rates that like, it's just more expensive. Like you talked
Mm-hmm.
about, it's just more expensive. And I think that then people are making these decisions a little more seriously, whereas in 2021 it was just really kind of more haphazard and
Yeah.
just getting in and waving everything and just kind of like, now we'll deal with
Totally.
it after.
And I think, thinking about like people, it is more expensive. And it's also more expensive to renovate right now, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
tariffs, those sorts of things are going to make things more expensive. But
Yeah.
like if that comes to fruition, um, what I will say is that I think the other thing on the market, and I'll speak to Tacoma, there are some houses that are sitting on the market, and those are
Mm-hmm.
houses that maybe don't have as much motivation. You know, speaking to the have to market, there are a fair amount of estate sales. There are some houses
Mm.
that are just like, you know, maybe these folks passed away, they're not able to, they maybe didn't, they had some deferred maintenance, they weren't able to get the house super ready to list but needed
Mm-hmm.
to list it. Maybe the next of kin are not local and able to do those updates, and those houses do have opportunity for people who are willing to, you know, put in some of that work and
Yeah.
maybe get, and I say opportunity because I mean like maybe pushing the envelope a little bit. That's a time where
Yeah.
like maybe negotiations could come in, or maybe they aren't priced as expensive as the house with the same stats
Yeah.
down the street. It's like that's really where you can optimize and use some of these like different negotiation, rehab loans, seller credits, those sorts of things to keep cash in your pocket for those renovations too.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's just, yeah, I think it's just interesting, good stuff to talk about, good stuff
For sure.
for buyers that are out there right now that are looking at homes. And like you're saying, there's homes that are sitting on the market and those might be good ones, like just because they're
Mm-hmm.
sitting on the market doesn't mean there's anything. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
No,
Every house
I
is
mean, and
different, but
sometimes they
like,
are like, that's the other thing is that sometimes a house, I talk about the like the non-existent ick that some houses get because they're sitting on the market.
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah,
they, for whatever reason, there's a perceived reason to not want to go see a house as a buyer. And sometimes seeing past that ick that might have come across with
mm,
the house being on the market, maybe the photos aren't great, maybe you walk in and it smells kind of funky, or
yeah,
like, seeing past the smell of the house, seeing past the bad carpet, seeing past the weird layout or, delayed maintenance on the certain things. Like
yeah.
seeing past that and seeing the potential can actually award you quite a lot of opportunity and equity down the road.
And I think about half our country understands that in terms of seeing past certain things about certain
Mm-hmm.
people and certain things and the fact that they're what they are and
Yeah. Yeah.
for their own self interests or whatever. So
Totally.
I think some people understand that train of thought,
I would think so. Maybe.
just seeing past some things, not just some things, a lot of things. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's good info. I think that that's hopefully helpful for anyone that's listening that is out there searching for a home and
Yeah.
maybe have some trouble, or maybe they're on the sidelines, or maybe they are just, curious about
Yeah.
like
And
what are your expectations, moving
right.
in? Like, what's turnkey mean to you? I think that's an important question for any realtor
For
to ask
sure.
a buyer.
And I think just something I like to reiterate is that like most of the time houses are not as pretty as HGTV, as pretty as
What?
Instagram when you
What?
move in. And that's like normal. That is normal. Like you do not need, and especially your first home doesn't need to be your dream home. And it is like there's sometimes that happens, but it's like there's a lot of opportunity. I keep
Mm-hmm.
saying opportunity, but like a lot of potential for growth into your home over time, and like Instagram influencers who buy these
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar houses when they're 16, like that's not reality. And so I think
Nah.
it's like a good reminder to be like, hey, your first home isn't always your forever home, and you can do a lot with your first home that makes it your own over time too.
And them HGTV shows are not real. Like, let's
Oh,
be honest.
not
Like,
real. No
I know
way.
people who've been on there as the realtor and as the buyer and whatever, and it's so planned. But I ain't
Hmm.
gonna say it's not fun to watch. Like, I will
Oh no,
definitely
it's
sit
a
there and
great
watch
time.
it.
I love it, but
Yeah,
it's also not real.
it ain't real at
Sometimes.
all.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
not real.
No
It's
one can
so
do a
stupid.
full renovation in 30 minutes. Just would like to remind anybody.
Nah, it is real. It is, man. And like the house hunters and all that, like all of that stuff is hella produced. I want to see the live version of that at some point in time. I'm waiting for that. I don't know when it's gonna come, but like I'm waiting for that. Is there anything else you want to? Is there any other last points that we have not made? Let me
I
take a
don't,
look. I don't
I
know.
was like, I think we covered a lot of
I
what
think
we
we did
were
cover.
wanting to chat about. And
Yeah, we also
yeah.
did the balance of returning your investment, the
Mm-hmm.
ROI. We talked about that, renting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think we've hit most of it for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. That's good. Yeah, so hopefully people. So
Thanks
we
for
have one more
having me.
segment.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the
Oh,
last
yes.
segment?
I'm
Okay,
ready.
it's not hot take anymore. I got something else
Oh,
on.
I was
Yeah. So
hoping, but
all
go
right.
on. Yeah.
So this is just fill in the blank. So
Mm.
go ahead and fill in the blank here. If my home vibe had a celebrity spokesperson, it would totally be blank.
Mm. If my home had a celebrity, hmm. Okay. My initial thought was Haley Williams from Paramore,
Interesting.
which because colorful, like
Yep, I could see that.
funky, and also pretty artistic.
Okay.
Also, we listen to a fair amount of loud music in my household,
Okay.
so a little bit of
That's
that.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love loud music.
Yep.
All right. The reality show I'd thrive on is blank, and here's why.
Mm. Okay. I have always thought that I would do a pretty decent job on Survivor.
Oh wow. I didn't expect that one.
I probably not. But I say that because I am like, I can be a roll up your sleeves and get her done type of person.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and I like camping, so we'll say that. I
Okay.
don't mind being a little dirty. So,
I am not a camper. Like I love nature. I love being out in nature. I love all the things, but I'm trying to be in the bed. Like if you
hmm.
gotta, if you, I'm a glamper. I'm a glamper. I love
Oh,
glamping.
glamping is great. Don't get me wrong. As I
Yeah,
get older, glamping is the move. But
yeah.
I think for, a cash prize, I could rough it for a little while.
I could too. I think I could. I'd
Hmm.
be all right. Just like
Hmm.
the yard work thing. Like once I get out
Yeah.
there, I'm
Once
good.
you're
Like I'm
there
Gucci.
doing
Yeah,
it,
I'll sleep on the ground. I'll do whatever. I ain't really tripping. But
yeah.
yeah, thinking about it's worse than doing it.
Yes.
Number three, my toxic home habit is blank, but I'm owning it.
My toxic home, I know exactly what it is, which is leaving my shoes out right by the door. Because I am a fierce believer in shoes off at the front door.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that is the rule. But it does create a pile. And I like wearing different shoes every day. So it creates a little pile. But
Yeah,
I own it.
I
And
hear
my
that.
house is way less dirty because I'm not wearing my shoes in the house.
Yeah, I don't even pay attention, but we have shoes like outside the door, inside the door. It's getting kind of bad,
Mm-hmm.
actually. It's getting kind of
Mm-hmm.
really bad. All right, so let's see. The song that best
Mm.
describes my current season of life is blank.
Ooh. Ooh. Song. Let's see. I feel like, okay, I'm not necessarily a big fan, but I did hear Happy by Pharrell Williams today.
Mm,
I was
mm-hmm,
like, you know
mm-hmm,
what? That is kind of what I'm
mm-hmm,
trying to channel into the world these
mm-hmm.
days. It's just like keeping that energy a little positive and, moving with like a pep in my step. So we'll
I
say
love
that
it.
today. Yeah.
I love it. All right. Last but not least,
hmm
the most surprising thing I've learned about myself through home ownership is blank.
Interesting. I think the most through home ownership, there's a few things, but I'm often like not very patient. I and I want things to get done faster, and it's like sometimes it does benefit you to take a step back, a deep breath, and like evaluate the full picture before moving forward. So
Yeah.
I think for house projects, for a lot of different things through home ownership, that has been a very hard but necessary lesson.
Nice, nice. Well,
hmm
congratulations for surviving fill in the blank. That's dope.
Did
So
it.
that's
We
the
did
actually
it.
that's you are the first fill in the blank participant of the new segment. So I used to do hot take before. Now we're doing fill in the
hmm
blank. So that's just is what it
Great.
is. We change it up. We changing
I
the
love it.
jingle at the beginning. We changed in like there's all kinds of. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Just keep it real with y'all. Like the joint that I used to use for the beginning of Inside Abode, like the little jingle or whatever,
hmm
was an old Steve Lacy song that was on SoundCloud
Mm,
like back when I started this in 2000 like 18 or 19. And it was just a Lucy. I knew it was a demo. It was a demo joint and it was just the beat and it was really dope. I really liked it. And so I'm like, man, it's on SoundCloud. I don't think this is ever reaching an album. I mean, it should, but it wasn't a
hmm
song. You could clearly was a demo, and it clearly wasn't finished, and it clearly was not anywhere being near done. So I was like, I really liked that bass line though. I really liked it, and so then I pulled that and just used it, and it was cool. Then
Yeah.
I get this DMCA notice like on like literally 4 pages of podcasts that I've been because I've had this podcast has been going since 2019. It's 6 years of
Right.
podcasts, almost 5 years, and there's like a whole chunk of them that are like we're going to take this down if you there's a part of this, and I'm like
Right.
because
Oh
like you
no.
understand this because like he probably has moved labels or something
hmm
happened with his
Yeah.
deal with the label, and so therefore they go scour the whole internet for anything, and I'm
Yep.
like oh because they
Any
put that
sample
song
of
on.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, they put that song on. He dropped some joint, and I think it was just to get out of his deal probably, but like it
Mm,
was like probably like 2020 or 21 because he hasn't dropped the
yeah.
joint since probably
Yeah.
around that time. So they're probably in some label dispute, and now he's out, and now I'm like,
And
crap.
now we don't have a jingle, but now we do.
We have a new one, and this is this
Yeah.
this producer I actually know, Eric G. He's from
Mm.
Auburn, actually. He's from
Oh,
around here,
nice.
and now he's in LA, I think. But he's done some big stuff. But
Right on.
he's I got a whole lot of his beats, and he's super dope, and he's cool. Shout out to Eric G. Like, so yeah, I'm going the safe route this time, where I don't think anyone's coming
No one's coming for
this
us.
for this one. Actually, it's from a joint called The Tom Hardy. It's called Money. So anyway, I'm a
Cool.
music head. Like I like,
I love
and
it.
that came out probably in 2010, 08, 10, 12, somewhere
Sure.
in that range. But that's the
Yeah.
origins of the new jingle. So
Here for it.
that was a whole thing that nobody needed to know. I just
I
wanted
love
to get
it.
that off my
I
chest on the podcast because
Now we
you're a
know.
music person. I know that you understand where I'm coming from.
Absolutely.
All right. So, how do people get in touch with you if they want to know more about renovations
Yeah.
and all those things?
Yeah, absolutely. My Instagram is the way to go. That at maddymixter.realtor. I've been sharing house renovation stuff there for a while. So there's a couple highlights with stories and transformations, weird things I found. And so yeah, hit me up there.
Okay. All right. And with that, we'll have that information down in the comments section,
hmm
or you can look down there or link it,
Yeah,
or they'll just follow you and from wherever.
yeah,
All right. With that, thank you for joining. Appreciate you hopping on last minute. I
absolutely.
asked you like
Yeah,
literally hours ago to be on today because we just have shuffling. That's my Friday
yeah.
for you though. Like
It
it's
works.
it's
It
par for
works.
the course. So thank you for jumping on. And with
Absolutely.
that, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully there was something that was good in here that you got out of there. Hit the subscribe button, follow us on Instagram, go to the website. There's more podcasts. Go listen to all the other podcasts. Go look at all the YouTube videos. Go do all the things. There's tons of content out there in the Abode land.
Hmm.
Check us out. So with that, we'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Bye.
All right.